I want to buy myself a guitar. I want to make myself a guitar. Look at the phone book. What can I do? You want in the phone book? I have to go on the internet. I want on the internet. Mark Bailey guitars. So I showed him his place. He said we're going to make a guitar. I said I don't know how to make a guitar. I said I know how to make a guitar. That's why you came here. You came to learn how to make a guitar. So we made a guitar. It was cool. It was really cool. I said I want someone to mother of pearl. He said that would be quite difficult, but you know, I'll do it for you if that's what you like. I said I want 3 headstocks. He says, well, if you're hungry, if you must. And then I decided I want to make myself a little ukulele. He says, we got loads of ukuleles. We'll make a little ukulele for you. So I made one. So if you want to make yourself a guitar, get yourself down to the bed of guitar, make a man easy to live up somewhere there. I don't exactly know where we are, but we're near it.
Workshop for so actually aimed at beginners. I might get something from this. From you guys in the chat. Potential chat. Leave your best tip and I'll out. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I've got 5 of my best tips for you. We're going to be live streaming for I don't know, usually half an hour to an hour or so. We'll try and keep it short. But I've got these 5 things that I want to express to you. I'll give you the too long didn't watch version. Make a plan. Get pre-made blanks. You need to know what to do, what order to do it, and when to stop. Believe it or not, clamping, holding your workpiece is half the battle. And twice and cut once. So that's the 5 tips in really quick form. But I've got a couple of other really important things to tell you. And I'm also, as is the tradition on this channel, I'm going to be doing a little bit of live action. Bit of live action to show off our multiple camera angles. And we like to make a bit of sawdust, don't we? Pass the time during lockdown. So yeah, and I've got loads of updates to get to at the end. And also, I've got the secret of guitar making in my pocket. I forgot to put it there. Damn. Hang on, I'll just get it. Some of you already know what it is. Now, some of you have already seen the secret that I keep in my pocket. So don't let on. And I'll get through the 5 tips and then I'll show you the secret. I like to keep it in my pocket and whip it out at parties to impress people. Never works. So Carol's got her hand up already. Yeah, if you've got any questions or anything like that, then make sure to leave them in the comments. And if there's anything in this video that you find useful or interesting, then please click the like button. It really helps us trying to grow the channel. And if you're not subscribed already, make sure you do that. And if you are subscribed, make sure you hit the bell icon so that you'll always get notifications when we're on. Go on, Carol.
We seem to be having connectivity problems.
Connectivity problems.
Everybody's saying that you're breaking up and going on and off, and it looks like our connection is fluctuating. 'Cause- 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 'cause-
It's a shame. It's a good start.
Yeah, it's a shame, but at least they're telling us.
So cheers, folks, for letting us know. A bit of a wonky start. Nothing new there, is there? What I'll do is I'll turn this computer off, and maybe that's interfering. So is that any better?
It says perfect streaming now, so...
Okay, maybe there was some interference. No worries. I'll just get on with it anyway. I'm sure you got the gist of all that. That was the too long didn't watch version. I'm now going to go into a little bit more detail on every one of those points. So do you have any heckles before we start, Carol?
Well, we're collecting quite a list of tips already. So
Good. Right, well, I did have them on the screen there, but I had to switch it off.
No, I think it was
So
interfering.
we're going to rely on Carol reading them out.
Okay.
So do you want to do some first, or shall I do mine first? Let's do mine first. Right, bear with me, let's get through them. Number one, tip number one, have a plan. So what I mean by a plan really is a drawing. Something like this. This here is the drawing that I made for Lockdown Lucy. So this is the drawing, and then this is the guitar. So you can buy a drawing. Quite a few of you have done that. But of course, my advice would be to make your own drawing, and that is really what we're all about. So look at that, as if by magic. So here at guitarmaking.co.uk, we have for the last 5 years been building a guitar making academy where you can design and build your own acoustic or electric guitar completely from scratch, starting with your blank piece of paper and going through the entire process until you've made your drawing. So you don't have to do that. You could buy a drawing, like I say, but it's really handy to have one because then you know where all the bits go, basically. So it's really important that some of the bits are in exactly the right place. Some of the bits don't really matter, like your volume control. That can go anywhere. But things like your bridge and your fret locations need to be dead on. So doing a drawing is actually, it's also a decision making process. So every line you draw represents a decision made. So obviously if you draw a pickup on, then you've chosen that pickup, haven't you? So it's really useful to do a drawing because it will iron out all your design decisions, and you need to know what you're making before you start, don't you? So great idea to do a drawing, and you can lay out all the bits, and also a good idea is to actually buy your parts in advance. Just for example, here's a bridge. You can actually lay them onto your drawing and then just check that everything looks all right, you know. So yeah, that would be my number one tip, is have a plan. It's a good rule in life, isn't it? So main reasons are it's a decision making process. So every line draw represents a decision made. By the end of your drawing, you'll know exactly which parts to order if you haven't already ordered them, and you'll also know which patterns to make. So I'll be talking more about patterns in a minute, because that is, of course, one of the secrets. Oh, I've lost my list of secrets, Carol.
It's in your back pocket, Mark.
It's not, it was.
It's in your back pocket.
No, it was in my back pocket. No, it's not. Is it
So
on
is
the
that
bench?
another secret?
No, I buried it. buried it under my drawing. My list of secrets. Okay, so secret number 2. Number 2, massive tip number 2 is try and order wood that is ready to work on. So what I mean is, this is one of our pre-made body blanks. So I do meet a lot of people who've got like a massive chunk of wood in their shed that they want to make a guitar out of, but it's the wrong thickness and it's not flat by any means. So most wood arrives rough sawn, which is it kind of looks like this. Let's see if I can get a better shot of that. So this is rough sawn. Now, getting from a rough sawn piece of wood like that to, say, a finished blank, here's a neck blank. Believe it or not, is half the battle. So getting your piece of wood flat and straight is half the battle. Now, there might be more than one half to this battle. We'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, my advice, tip number 2, is buy ready-to-work blanks. So at guitarmaking.co.uk, we supply body blanks, and our neck blanks are all perfectly flat and smooth. They've gone through the thickness sander, so they're nice and smooth and flat and ready to work on. And believe it or not, if you've ever tried to plane up a piece of wood, then believe it or not, it really is half the battle. Getting a piece of wood flat and straight to start on is a massive bonus if you can do that. So that's why we supply our blanks ready to work, and they are a little bit more expensive. Obviously you can buy rough sawn timber cheaper elsewhere, but that's because it hasn't been machined or processed yet. So our blanks are a little bit more than probably you'd find elsewhere, but that's because, you know, we've worked on them and made sure that they're actually ready for you guys to make it as easy as possible. So yes, getting a piece of wood flat and straight, believe it or not, is half the battle. So that is tip number 2. And of course, you can get your blanks ready to work from us. Links are all in the description. So, as I mentioned earlier, or maybe I didn't, I did it in the too long didn't view version, is you basically, when you're building a guitar, you need to know what to do, what order to do it in, and you need to know when it's done. You need to know when to stop, because obviously in the you know, in the quest for perfection, you can ruin the workpiece. There's probably a quote there somewhere, a much better one than that, but you know what I'm getting at. You can worry it to death, so you need to know when to stop, and that's what basically I'm here for. So if you are a premium member on the site, then you get access to our full courses where you can design and build your own electric or acoustic guitar. And what we've done is I've basically filmed the entire process, broken it down step by step into, well, it's about 50 or 60 10 or 20 minute jobs. I think if a job takes longer than 20 minutes, then there's probably an easier way to do it, or it can be broken down into smaller jobs. So that's what I've done basically. For instance, carving the neck is one of the things people are worried about. They think it's really difficult to carve a neck. It probably is if you just aim for a perfect carved round neck straight off the bat. But what we do is I've broken it down step by step. So we start off by carving facets, and then we take the neck down to thickness, we refine the facets, and then we just blend it in. And if you've made nice flat facets, then it comes out naturally nice and round. if you just follow the procedures that I've laid out. So just for example, what you might think is really difficult and virtually impossible to do is probably just a series of quite simple jobs. In fact, I know that anybody can build a guitar because I've taught over 400 people face to face how to do it. And let's face it, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And you don't have to take my word for it. Some of those people are actually in the chat now. I don't know if I'm pointing the right way. Some of those people are actually in the chat now, so you don't have to take my word for it. And you can also head over to the forum, which is free community. We're there to help you out if you get stuck building your guitar. But preferably, I'd like to get you before you even start, because you can start making mistakes straight away. And every mistake you make is a setback that can cost you time and money. So the best thing to do if you're contemplating building a guitar is to sign up as a premium member and follow through step by step the courses as we've laid them out, and you'll end up making I would recommend that you keep it fairly simple. So, you know, stick to the KISS theory, at least to start with. Keep it simple, stupid. What I suggest is that you make a fairly basic guitar, and then once you've got the basic methods down, well, then you can customise the design to your heart's content and go wild and make your dream guitar. But you don't have to do that. You could just go straight for the super duper all singing, all dancing version if you like. All the methods are the same. You'll just be doing more of it, and it will take longer and be a lot more difficult. So what I've laid out is methods to try and make your life, as your experience of building a guitar, as pain-free as possible, so you don't end up hating yourself and costing yourself a load of time and money. So you need to know what to do, what order to do it in, and when to stop. So my best advice for that is to sign up as a premium member. Obviously I would say that because I'm biased, but you don't have to take my word for it. Check out what the other people are doing in the chat and head over to the forum and see what they're saying. So tip number 4 is, believe it or not, clamping or holding your workpiece is half the battle. So I guess what I'm trying to talk about here is setup. So every particular job has a particular setup, and that's what we go through on the course. Sometimes the actual job only takes 2 minutes, but it takes 10 minutes to set it up. I'll give you an example. A setup for thickness in the headstock. So one of the jobs we need to do when we're making a bolt-on neck, for instance, is what we call thickness the headstock. So we take the headstock portion down to the correct thickness, and the way to do that is to clamp it into this jig here. So it's a fairly basic example, but what I would do is clamp that in there, and then we use a router here to take that down to thickness. So there's various different methods of clamping. Obviously this wouldn't be ideal, I'd need a bigger clamp really. But the setup of each job is just as important as the actual doing of the job. In fact, that is really what it's all about for me. I love making guitars. Each guitar I make is an adventure, and what I'm trying to do is work on the system. So I came from a guitar factory where we had every kind of machine imaginable for making guitars, and then I had to take those methods, transfer them into methods that could be done just on an ordinary bench, just any old table, preferably the more solid the better. A nice solid bench is all you really need, and a few tools. So I did a list of essential tools. Most notably, it would be a bandsaw and a router are the biggest tools that you'll need to buy. But the rest of them are just mainly a load of hand tools, most of which you might already have lying about. If not, you might know somebody who has them lying about, who'll let you borrow them or even donate them to a worthy cause. You'd be amazed what people will give you when you start putting the word about that you're going to be making guitars and you need tools. You'd be amazed what people will give you because they're just not using them. So try that, put the word out there, beg, borrow, but don't steal. So tip number 4 was the clamping and holding is half the battle. The way you set up each operation, and basically that's what I've been working on since I left the factory 20 years ago, really, is I've been working on how to take those amazing methods that I learned in the factory, translating them to how ordinary mere mortals like us can do it with bare minimum of equipment and funds. We literally started with nothing, and we've slowly built it up from there. It's taken 20 years to get to the point we are at today.
Oh, it's 25, by the way.
25 years, yeah. I was never very good at maths.
It's 25 since you left the factory.
Yeah, it goes to show. Goes to show, doesn't it, Carol? So there are my 5 basic tips. But I've got an extra one before I whip out my big surprise.
Stop.
Not only am I going to whip it out, but I'm going to use it in anger. Right, tip number 6, bonus tip, is it really helps if you've got some support. So I'm incredibly lucky. Sorry, guys. So I'm incredibly lucky to have Carol. And also, you know, all of you lot.
Because without all of you, none of it would have happened. You'd just be somewhere in your double-decker bus trying to make and sell guitars. But it's because of everybody's support that we've kept going this long. I mean, it's 20. We set up in 1998, and that's when he made his first neck as a sole trader, and it's taken a long time. And
Yeah,
this
so
year,
it means a lot.
we thought we might be finished, and it's been amazing. So thank you.
Your support means a lot. So I'll just try and regain my composure. Whew. So yes, none of this would be possible without the amazing support that I get from everybody else. So, just give me a
But
sec.
in all seriousness, most craftspeople, it's like most artists and musicians, because of the way funding is for even the most brilliant of creators, because it's quite hard to make a living for lots of them. Everybody needs people behind them, don't they? Everybody needs a partner or a friend or someone who's got their back, and we're lucky to have so many of you.
So let's clear the bench. I'll do something manly.
And thank you, thank you for all the comments. I'm not going to read them out because all those comments. Let's face it, guys. It's been a bit of a hard year for everybody, hasn't it? And we are so grateful that you tune in and watch, because it's actually given us a shape to our week, and it's no word of a lie that all your support, both emotional and the fact that you've all been buying things, is keeping us going. And we didn't know in April whether we'd get through this year, whether we'd make it to the end, and we have. And it means that we're going to have plans for next year. So thank you. Are you back in the room?
I'm back in the room.
Yay! Right. Go.
So, yes, the secret of guitar making that I've had in my pocket all this time. Nearly all this time. What's the secret of guitar making, Mark?
What is the secret of guitar making, Mark?
People are always asking me. And so what I do is I like to whip this out. There it is.
Woohoo!
So if there is one thing that I could show you, that would be the secret. It would be these little beauties. So what we do is we make our drawing, and then we trace everything and we make these patterns. So to save you time, our pal Darren down south is now making these for us on his CNC machine. So to save you a bit of time, we're now also offering these patterns for sale on the website. And here's how it works. So you basically clamp your platen into place, and then the cutter follows the shape, the bearing follows the pattern, and the cutter cuts into the wood. So we have patterns for all the different shapes. You can buy them as a set or individually, and we also supply these cutters as well. So the reason we supply anything at all was we're just trying to help you find the more difficult to find stuff. So that's what I supply on my site. You don't have to buy it from me, you can get them from anywhere. But some of these can be difficult to find. Let me show you the important thing is that well, I used to use an 18mm long cutter and then 18mm MDF, but we've since found these slightly smaller cutters which are 1/2 inch, and they work perfectly with this 1/2 inch patterns. So the problem with most patterns that you'll see on the internet, you'll see there's lots of places that sell guitar patterns, but they're all, for my mind, they're all too thin. So they're all 1/4 inch thick, and ours are twice as thick as that. Because if you imagine this was only 1/2 inch, this was only 1/4 inch, when you put it on your workpiece, then you have to go really deep on it before the bearing's touching the pattern. So with our 1/2 inch patterns, you don't have to go so deep. You can do a nice gentle cut all the way around for your first cut. So it's a lot safer for the sake of a little bit extra cost. Basically, we've used thicker material for the patterns, so it's cost us more. It's worth it for the extra safety and ease of use, in my mind. So that's what we've done. So that's why I think our patterns are better than the other patterns that you would get anywhere else on the internet. Basically because they're twice as thick. Okay. Cutters are also available, and there's, I suggest about 4 different cutters that you'll need to make a guitar. Again, they're all in the Essential Tools PDF, which you can download for free actually if you go to the site. Go on, Carol.
Right, so there's all sorts of things, right? And but Rock and Roller 912 says, what diameter is the cutter?
It's a 1/2 inch long and it's a 1/2 inch diameter. That is my workhorse cutter now.
And that's the one to use with the
that I use for everything. There is one pattern, the P90s pattern is also available. P90s have got a real sharp corner, and so you'll need the small diameter router cutter. Yeah, I can't put my hands on one right now, but in the shop you'll find 4 different cutters. So there's a short one, a long one, and a small one. Really, you'll need all 3 at some point. So you could buy all 3 or just buy them as you need them. So just to conform with tradition then, I'm going to actually do something physical. I'm going to do a physical demonstration of how these actually work for anybody who's new to this. I know you guys are all veterans and you know what you're doing, but for those that don't, let me just show you. The secret of guitar making is that you can copy any shape with these little beauties. So let me pick one. I'm going to do, let's do a humbucker shape in this guitar.
Can I just quickly ask you, Deeds just asked, do you use the same diameter bit for the humbucker and the P90?
You'll need the smaller one for the P90. The smaller one could do both, but obviously a smaller cutter will take longer. So I would usually use the 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch as the standard, and then that's 12 by 12, and then the small one I think is a 9mm 3/8, and it's the same length, 1/2 inch long and 3/8 wide. They're all in the shop anyway. You can see the dimensions for that if you head to the tools section.
I'm sorry for laughing, it's just that James Perry said he preferred us bickering, and I thought that'll make you laugh. And David Loveland says
I'm an artist.
He says his wife is listening, and if she only hears that he only needs four bits, he won't be able to buy any more or any tools.
Yeah, I can't. Carol will tell you. I'm always saying we just need one more tool for the workshop. There's always one more. So
we've got we have actually got a collection of questions as well.
have you got any tips? People's tips. Shout out some people's tips for us, Carol.
Well, do you want me to do them now?
Yeah.
Right, hold
Please. I'm going to change this cutter.
Right. Okay. Well, actually, there's a question before we do that, which is worth asking now. Adrialdo Ferreira, hello. He says, do you usually use the metric system? And we're a bit weird, aren't we, in that sense?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that. Guitar makers, I'm forced to use both. Half of my parts come from America, and the other half come from Europe, Germany or Japan. And so they're all metric. The American stuff's all in imperial. So guitar makers tend to use both at the same time. Sometimes I will favour one over the other. Like if we're talking about scale lengths, we usually say 25.5 inch scale length, don't we? Nobody says 646mm or whatever it is. I'm going to check that. Nobody says, yeah, 647mm. But you will see that written in guitar manufacturer specs. They'll say it's got a 646mm scale, but that's because they're trying not to get sued. They're trying to be as different as possible from everybody else. That's what most guitar manufacturers are doing. And so you'll see they'll change the scale length by 1mm or something, just to be different. So I will favour one over another in certain situations, but we usually use both. It's a brilliant question. And it can lead to all sorts of confusion. Because can you believe I was well into my 40s before I found out that Americans call mils a thousandth of an inch is a mil to Americans, and a mil to us lot is 1mm. So there's a big difference between 1 mil over here and 1 mil over there. Thousandths of an inch versus 1 mil is 1mm, or even 1 milliliter if you're talking liquids. So yeah, we were told by our UV cure supplier, our paint supplier, to spray our lacquer 4 mil thick. Imagine 4mm of paint. So yeah, I couldn't believe, I was like, no, it can't be right. 4 mil of paint. So yeah, on further investigation, it turned out that a mil in America is a thousandth of an inch. And how did I get into my 40s before I found that out? Explains a lot, doesn't it? So yes, we use both, but I will favour one if it suits. Brilliant question. We got any more tips or questions, Carol?
Well, we've got questions, but they're more general. Do you want to do this and then answer the general questions afterwards? I would, if I were you.
Whatever you think.
I think so, because you're explaining about the templates in there.
Yeah.
I would leave it till afterwards because you're explaining about the templates and the thing. I could read out a couple of tips though whilst you're getting set up.
Go on then.
Well, so the first few tips came in really quickly, really early on, TV 101. His first tip, and I've written it in red, is hand.
Oh, this will be Tony, isn't it? This will be TV 101.
So keep your hands away from the sharp stuff. Tip number 2, which I've summarised as...
Shall I say, well, always keep your hands behind the blade. That's what I would say. Yeah, good one. Always keep your hands behind the blade, and then you'll be safe.
Yes, and right. So, and then his second tip is referring to when you're dealing with things that are hot. Because you've done some demos, haven't you, where you've actually heated things up to cherry red. And his tip for that is holdy coldy.
Holdy coldy.
Holdy coldy. So make sure when you keep your hands cocked.
Make sure the things that you're holding aren't red hot. That's always a good.
Like that, holdy coldy.
Yeah, that's always a good one.
Mm-hmm. And then you'll know about this one, but I've no idea. He says always have a swear word handy.
Always have a swear word
always
handy.
Have a swear. Obviously, I know nothing about that. And can I help you?
No.
Okay, well I'll keep.
I'm looking for a clamp.
And then
remember when I said clamping and holding?
Yeah.
Was half the battle.
His last one on that was that if are you confused? Do you not know what to do? He said there'll be an answer in the StreamMac catalogue. Right?
Yes.
So apart from the guitar making site, there's probably an answer in the. We used to. Do you remember when in the days before the internet we used to get the StreamMac catalogue used to come out maybe once a quarter or once every couple of months, and it was on like old, almost sepia-coloured newspaper, and that's how old we are. And we used to be so excited. Do you remember how excited we used to be when the StreamMac
Yes,
catalogue...
well, it's always a treat getting something from StreamMac, isn't it? They do sell the best tools in the world, but you could empty your bank account quite rapidly into the StreamMac bank account, and you certainly don't need 95% of all those tools, but it is great for inspiration. And what I would say is that you should try and learn from as many different places as possible. The StreamMac catalogue or the StreamMac website is is certainly one amazing resource that we all use, and I would also recommend to get as many books as you can. There's also suppliers in the UK, they're all our friends, hopefully they're all our friends anyway. There's Tone Tech and All Parts in the UK. Sorry if I didn't mention any of the others, but Touchstone Tonewords, etc. We use them all, and I would recommend that you get yourself as many books as you can on the subject of guitar making, if that's what you're interested in. That's what I did. But I do realise it is difficult to learn from books, and I personally like to watch somebody do something. That's what good stuff on YouTube as well. But of course, what's difficult is finding exactly what you want when you need it, or finding something that follows through the whole thing from start to finish with no omissions. And so that's what we've done on the Guitar Making Academy, is I've put together 50 or 60 10 20 minute videos, which is a step-by-step guide to building completely from scratch. So no kits involved. We talk about kits, but when we talk about kits, we're talking about basically just pre-made blanks. And the one concession that I do make is that in our kits we supply a pre-made fretboard. So for your first guitar, there's no shame in using a pre-made fretboard, then at least you know it's going to play in tune, don't you? So I'm just going to quickly do this pickup route here. So what I've done is I've clamped my pickup into place. Obviously what I did first was did my design, and then I laid it out on my workpiece so I know exactly where it's going. And now I've clamped up my pattern in exactly the right place where I've marked it with my pencil, and now it's just a simple case of copying that shape into my workpiece. And most electric guitar jobs are similar to this. At least this is the machining part of it. There's quite a lot of other things that you'll need to know, obviously, to make your guitar actually work, but a lot of the jobs are very simple like this. And what I always say is, if you can draw a straight line with a ruler and a pencil, then you can make a guitar, because most of the jobs is guiding one thing against another thing. And what I've done is I've taken these guitar manufacturer factory methods down onto a smaller scale onto your workbench. So let me demonstrate the secret of guitar making in action. With all this in place, all I need to do now is set my router to cut to the right depth. Your router might be different, every router's different. What I'm going to do is take it down until it touches the wood there in the hole. To take my stop off, lock it there, and now I need to dial in 0 to tell my router that this is 0. So on this router here, I've got a depth stop here. So I'm going to set that to 0. Your router might be different to this, but all routers have got some kind of depth stop where you'll be able to set the depth. And what I'm going to do now is dial in my depth. I'm just going to go 18mm deep for now on this one. So when you're doing routing jobs, you just need to know really how deep to go. Again, all these kind of things are covered on the course, and all the health and safety stuff is also covered. If you've not used a router before, then you need to follow very carefully what I do and watch the health and safety video first. So the most important thing is I'm not going to start it up if it's touching wood. When I say touching wood, I mean if it's going to take a cut. So at the moment, although it's level with the wood, it's not technically touching because it's not going to take a cut. So I can start it up there, and I'm going to plunge in about 3mm, about 1/8 of an inch, and then I do basically circles that get bigger until I'm going around the edge. So I take one pass and then back to the middle again, and then I go down another 3mm or 1/8 of an inch and take another pass. And so basically I can't go right down to full depth in one massive cut, so I'm going to do it in layers. In this case probably about 4 or 5 passes. So Carol, if you could just watch the camera as well, I'm doing it.
Can I just state one thing quickly before we start? Thank you. Boo's just sent us some money, so thank you, Boo.
Oh, thanks, Boo.
Thank you very much.
Made me boo. And that, my friends, is how we make a copy of any shape you want, really. Doesn't have to be a guitar, does it? You've still got time before Christmas to make all your family gifts using this method. Yeah, bulk them up. See how quick that is to do one, and then it would it'd be even quicker to do the next one because everything's all set up, ready to go.
Before you move on, can I ask you some questions?
Yeah. So that's why we use patterns, is for accuracy, repeatability, and for speed. So it speeds things up, makes them more accurate and repeatable, so everyone's going to be exactly the same. Brilliant. So that's why we use them. So that's my demonstration part over with. Although there was one other thing. We had a question last week, and Carol's got a question. Go on, Carol.
No, there's just some stuff about before you move on. So, I'm just looking for it. Hold on, give me a minute. There's quite a lot of stuff that's just coming now. Right, Adraldo Ferreira said, "Don't you drill holes before using the router?" So he's noticed that you've just, gone straight in with the router with the template. So he was asking, do you not drill holes first?
Yeah, some people would expect that you have to drill it all out first. That's what we call stitch drilling, where you drill out bulk material first. But imagine how much longer that would take. You don't need to do that. Unnecessary, not needed.
Yeah, because so as a follow-up to that...
That's the beauty of routers, is they cut sideways, they cut down, they plunge, and they cut sideways as well.
So you wouldn't use a force and a bit to take
Not
off?
all cutters do that, by the way.
Right.
If you buy cheap cutters, you can buy things that look like this from the internet, but they don't cut when they're plunging in, you see. They only cut on the edge. So you've got to be a bit careful which cutters you buy, You know if you get the wrong one because loads of smoke comes out when you're plunging down because it's burning its way in instead of cutting. So not all cutters, there's the small one, there it is. Not all cutters are created equal, and ours are plunge cutting as well as side cutting, top quality cutters that we use. So the ones that are on the site are the same ones that I use. Here's the small one that I use for the P90s I was looking for earlier on.
So what you're saying is if you've got a sort of a what might be a cheap router, then you might be worth, because Deej was saying
it'd be worth throwing it away and getting a decent one.
Okay, but Deej says would you ever use a forcener bit to take out some of the meat from the
Personally, I wouldn't do that because it's just an extra job that's not necessary. There's no law against it though.
Okay, and another relevant to now is David Buckner says, are you using that blank as a demonstration, or would you route out all of the holes before you cut out the body shape, even though it has a maple veneer glue to
Fantastic point. I'm so glad you asked that.
Yeah.
This is a demonstration piece that I've been using for various live streams. If you're new to this channel, we've been live streaming now for 8 months, twice a week. I don't always have a mental breakdown in the middle of it. That doesn't happen very often. Because this is a demo piece, I've already cut the shape out. In fact, that's one of the things that I'm always telling people not to do because it's much easier to work on a big square lump of wood. So we usually do all our routing and drilling all the holes, and the cutting the shape out is the last thing we do. So again, the best thing I can advise is that you get yourself over to guitarmaking.co.uk, sign up as a premium member, and then you get the whole step-by-step procedure laid out. In fact, I'll give you another little secret here, is that if you go to the site and click on the courses, you can actually see the list of jobs comes up, and so you can't actually watch the videos, but you could at least see what order we do it in. There you go. I probably shouldn't have told you that. I shouldn't have said that.
Right, do you want some more general questions, or are you gonna?
Right, we had a question last week from a guy. Last week I put this again. I did this in the wrong order as well. So I cut the shape out before I did the truss rod slot, which is completely wrong. And I'm always telling people not to do that. And then I went and did it. So on the last live stream, I actually fixed it by routing the truss rod slot using a bit more of a complicated method than normal. But just to show that it can be done in the wrong order, you're just making your life a lot more difficult. So this is a scarf neck blank that I made a while back on the live stream. Google, just go to the channel and search for scarf neck and you'll find it. And then like an idiot, I cut the shape out before I did my truss rod slot. So on the last live stream, I did the truss rod slot, and the guy asked a question because I mentioned that the truss rod glues in, and then we glue the fillet on top of the truss rod. So there's going to be a piece of wood glued in there called the fillet. And the guy was confused about how we were going to glue the fretboard on then, if there was a bit of wood sticking out. So the answer is, we glue our fillet on, this fillet gets glued in, and then we chop it off, and we scrape off all the traces of glue until we're effectively left with a perfectly flat surface. And then we can go ahead and glue the fretboard on. So I think it was Tim, I think your name was, who was a bit confused about that. So hopefully that's answered your question about that. I may even carry on building this neck on the live stream, depending on what you guys want me to do. If there's something you want me to cover on these live streams, all you've got to do is ask, put it in the comments, and we'll do our best. That's what we're here for. We've got nothing else to do, have we, Carol?
Packing boxes.
Well, the world crumbles around us. We'll just carry on.
Right, we've got. There's actually a question. So that because you had that neck there and you showed the truss rod. So can we first say, can we wish Louis? He was watching earlier on. If he's still, I don't know if he's still here, but he's doing his exams.
Louis' exams.
And he had his exam. His big
Hope
exam.
it went well, or is going well,
and
or went well, or will go well.
all of those, right? But he's asked a few questions, right, which relate to. This seems like an appropriate time to do it. So, the first question is, he noticed that you glued a fillet onto the truss rod.
Yes.
Now he.
Well, no, the fillet is glued
over the
on top of the truss rod, but there's no glue on the truss rod, so the glue is only on the actual wood. So you don't want to get any glue on the metal part of the truss rod. It won't stick. If you get glue on there, it won't stick anyway. But what will happen is, the first time you adjust the truss rod, you'll hear all the glue, you'll hear it cracking as it releases from the truss rod, because wood glue won't stick metal. So what happens is, as you tighten it up for the first time, you'll hear the glue releasing from the truss rod, and it will sound like your neck is splitting. And also it can make your truss rod, instead of adjusting smoothly, it can make it kind of adjust in, you know, steps, like makes it not smooth. So when we're gluing the fillet down, we use minimal glue, and we try and keep the glue off the truss rod, so the glue only goes on the fillet. Or you can put glue on the side there, but just make sure there's no glue on the actual truss rod itself. If you think about it, when a truss rod bends, it's also sliding very microscopically in the slot. It needs to slide just a tiny bit as the wood bends around it. So if it's glued in place, then it won't work at all. So yeah, make sure you don't get any glue on the truss rod. No glue on the truss rod. Was I clear enough about that?
Yeah. But on that score, right? So Louis is studying resonance in physics at the moment. Okay.
Wow.
So that's sort of focusing his mind, and he thought that some of what you were doing with that was to do with stopping it. It was to do with resonance, but I
yes,
said
exactly. Yes.
But it's rattling. It's stopping the.
Well, same thing. It's to stop it from rattling or resonating. Yes. So some manufacturers will just try and get the truss rod slot exactly the right depth, so that when you glue your truss rod on, it doesn't rattle. It's not rattling now, but I guarantee that at some point it would start rattling. So what we do, yeah, in a factory situation, you can probably do that, because you can run like 10 necks through the machine and adjust it a little bit each time until it's absolutely perfect. And then you make sure everything else comes out exactly the same, because everything's done by machine, done to a thousandth of an inch. But using our DIY home methods, it's hard to get those sorts of tolerances using a hand router. So it's better to go slightly too deep. I recommend about 1 millimetre too deep. And then you put your truss rod in, and as you can see, there's a little step there. So I glue my fillet in. When the glue's dry, we cut and plane it flush. Obviously, it doesn't need to be that big. That's just a random piece of wood. The fillets are normally just big enough. So when you glue it in, it sticks up slightly proud. When the glue's dry, we plane or scrape it flat again, ready for the truss rod to go on, ready for the fretboard. And then there's no way it can rattle or resonate. Yeah, resonance is a fascinating subject.
Right.
Everything's resonating, isn't it? Everything's got a resonant frequency, and those are the kind of things we get obsessed about. Guitar makers obsess about resonant frequencies, resonances. Yes, it's all good fun. A lot less important really with electric guitars, but becomes really into importance with acoustics.
So we're still just holding with that for a minute. So Peter John, sorry, like a kite, says, do you use silicone in the trusswood slot?
No, I would only do that as a last resort on repairing somebody else's guitar that was made in a factory, and they didn't use a fillet. So it's a repair method that I might use, but I wouldn't build it onto a new guitar. No, there'd be no need. If the guitar's made right in the first place, then you shouldn't need to do that.
Okay, now still on this subject of resonance, this is another question from Louis, but it's worth bringing up now as well. So Louis is going to glue the neck of his guitar in. His granddad is concerned that it won't be strong enough, so his granddad's trying to persuade him to put some screws or some in it as well. So the question, he's worried about the resonance of the guitar. What would you say to that? Everybody said no in the chat.
It depends on what kind of neck you're making, Louis. If you're making a thin neck, like a Fender style neck, or even a scarf neck like this, there isn't enough wood there to get a strong enough glue joint. So if you're going to glue the neck in, we would usually start with a 2-inch neck blank. Where did my neck blank go?
Is it on the floor? In the
I
jig?
lost it when I had my mental breakdown.
Is it in the jig? At your
No.
feet?
No.
What are you looking for?
Gluing it in. Right, so I'll just show you these then. So yeah, so with a glued in neck, we start with a 2-inch neck blank. You see the neck blank to start with was 2 inches thick, instead of here's your Fender style neck, which is just 1 inch thick. Not enough meat. So your granddad's right about if you're using this neck, you can't glue it in. But if you're making a set neck, then you certainly can glue it in, as long as you've got enough of the neck sticking into the body. I'll show you what I mean. So in this case, you can see the neck actually extends under the front pickup. You can see that. And started with a 2-inch neck blank. Big, thick, chunky neck. And it needs to go in at least, I would say, 2¼ inches, 55 or 60 mil at least, to give you a strong enough neck joint. Now, if you were to put screws in this now, I think you're actually weakening the neck, because drilling 4 holes and then putting 4 metal things in it, wood expands and contracts, so it's more likely to split around the holes, if you ask me. Or if you drop it, it's going to shock, and there's 4 points where it could basically split the wood. So I've seen, for instance, people repairing headstocks. You'll quite often see a headstock break because of the angle on the headstock. They can hit the ground first and snap off. And imagine if you just glued it back on and then put 2 screws through. It's actually weaker than just gluing it. So yeah, glue in for a 2-inch neck, bolt on or screws for a 1-inch neck. Hopefully that's answered your question. So you're probably both right. There you go. That was diplomatic, wasn't it, Carol?
That's cool. Right, so, but there's a few more. So there's a few more questions sort of around that. So PB, when we put that on, PB earlier on asked the question: does the scale length affect the intonation?
Yes, but it's such a tiny difference that you can't actually measure it. Or at least if I could If you can measure it, you're a better man than me. So what I do is I measure the scale length and I add 1.5 mil or a 1/16 of an inch, and that gives me my string takeoff point for my thinnest string, the top E. Hopefully that makes sense to you, but that's how I work out the intonation for all my guitars. Also the gauge of string makes a difference as well, but it's such a tiny difference you can't really measure it out when you're making the guitar. So find your scale length, measure it out, and then add a 1/16 of an inch or 1.5 mil, and that will give you a pretty accurate but approximate location to put your bridge. And all bridges, pretty much all bridges, have some kind of intonation adjustment. So if you get it within a mil or two, or even 3, usually there's plenty of adjustment. On this one, the B and the G intonate, but also you've got these 2 screws at the back. 2 screws at the back, which allow you to move the bridge back and forward by quite a lot, actually. So that's another reason why I really like these bridges, especially for somebody who's a beginner. For one thing, there's only 2 holes to drill, so 2 mounting holes. It's really easy to locate. So what you've got to try and do is get the takeoff position of your bridge to line up. So scale length plus a 1/16 of an inch is where the takeoff position of that thinnest string should be. Now, on the Wilkinson bridge, he's made it easy for us. I explain how to do that in another video, but I don't want to confuse you. But it's really easy for a Wilkinson bridge to locate the position. Super easy.
Can I ask, and so there was, earlier on when that question was asked, there was some chat in there, and bag press, Darren asked, mentioned, is it different for a baritone?
Yes, so a baritone or a bass guitar would be different. I would add 10% for a baritone. So that's, it's virtually negligible, isn't it? So 1.5 mil plus 10%. It's like 1.65 mil, isn't it? That's the difference it would make. On a bass guitar, then I add an 1/8 of an inch on a bass guitar.
So what? Sticking with bridges, right?
And
Sorry.
there's more of a taper as well on a bass guitar, so the bass string ends up like about 1/4 of an inch back. But actually, sorry, just one more thing to say about that is that people worry too much about a lot of stuff. A typical bass bridge, if you measure to the front of the saddle where the string takes off from, you'll notice that the string actually takes off from a little bit further back. It takes off from about halfway into the saddle, if it's one of the round ones anyway. But most bass bridges are made like this. The string takes off from behind the front of the saddle. So if you put the front of the saddle exactly on the scale length, usually the intonation adjustment is built in. But don't quote me on that, and you have to double check. When it comes to bridge location, I always check 3 times just to go crazy.
Can you just wish Louis leaving now? He's got to do some more studying.
All right, Louis.
For his exams.
Yeah, you go and do some practicing, whatever you've got to do. What do they call it?
Exams. Studying.
Studying.
You don't
There's a
remember
word
that,
for it.
do you? Revising.
Revising. That's the word I'm looking for. All right. Good luck. Revise well. Hope it goes well for you. And I think on that note, I think we're pretty much done.
Yeah, but there's still questions.
Carol's got a few more questions
and
we've got to get through.
So,
if we don't get to all your questions today, folks, don't worry, because you can head over to the forum and ask there. So any questions we don't get to today, leave them in the comments down in the video there, or head over to the forum.
no problems getting through today. So Super Clunk asked, it's a bit random, he said, but string ferrules.
Well, that's up to you, isn't it? Mostly, I don't recess them. Ridged round a flange which sits proud. I don't know if I've got one to show you. Let me see if I can put my hands on one. As you start recessing them, then imagine when you're painting it, when you're spraying lacquer on, it's going to pool.
I don't suppose they can hear you, Mark.
They can, because I'm strapped to my microphone.
Oh, of course you are. Yeah, we seem to have some connectivity issues, everybody. Oh, it's come back again.
Maybe I'm out of range.
Whilst he's got his head in the cupboard, we're on a mobile. We have to use a mobile router because we've got no decent broadband here. Hopefully, we've been told that might we might get fibre in May next year. So hopefully, we're still doing it. It's back on. Well, shall I just run through a couple of the tips then? So the next tip
Go on.
was don't cut or shape your body or anything really. Don't cut or shape before you route. I think that was Rock and Roller.
Yeah, that's what I'm always telling folks. I meet a lot of people who say they're making a guitar and all they've really done is cut a guitar shape out of a piece of wood. I recommend that you do all the cutting out first, all the routing first, and you cut the shape out last. But that's all covered on the course. Like I say, the best advice I can give you is to go and sign up. This is a ferrule that we're talking about, used for string through body. This is actually a bass one. And the question was, do I recess them? So no, just this part goes into the hole and this part sticks out proud. So it would sit like that. Obviously it wouldn't normally go in a tuner hole, but that's how I would normally put them. And then it gives a bit of protection then, for if you put the guitar down on its back or whatever. Obviously these normally go in the body. Got any more questions, Carol?
No, we've got some. No, that's pretty much all the. Oh no, yeah, there is one. Sorry, there was a random one right back at the top. So Eddie Cameron said, how do you use the core drill (brackets 2 inches question mark) to profile the Strat headstock behind the nut?
Yeah, I got that out earlier as well. I've got this little jig here that I use. I can clamp my neck into there, look. So again, I come from a sort of factory background, so some of my methods might look a bit bonkers to you guys, but this is kind of how we would do it in a factory. If you're doing one of something, then quite often it doesn't really make sense to do all this setting up. But if you're making 10, then it starts to make a lot of sense. What we can do is clamp a neck into there and then use a hole drill to cut across like that. Believe it or not, it works. This is how we used to do it back in the day when we were making, 30 a day. It's really the only one of the only ways you could do it. There isn't time to do all that kind of thing by hand. You have to come up with methods that take minutes rather than hours. So yeah, this just cuts straight across there. I'll use a pedestal drill. So I'll just show you on my drill how it works. Over here. So what I do is I clamp all this in place. this would be clamped on, so it's not just sitting loose. Hole drill goes in. And then you can drill across like that. Now obviously if you're making just one guitar, it's probably quicker just to carve it by hand. I do demonstrate, I believe actually, I've got on the Guitar Making Academy at guitarmaking.co.uk you can make a bolt-on neck. There's a bolt-on neck course, and I believe I show that method on there. From memory, I'm not entirely sure, but I definitely show you how to avoid doing it. Because most people would just do it by hand with a rasp. And as I've seen in the comments, you can use your up and downer if you've got a drum sander. Drum sander like that. And you can use that as well to sand it. But yeah, seeing as how you asked, that's how we do it. Are we done?
Well, should we run through the tips?
Go on then.
So.
Are these random tips from the internet?
Yeah, and I might not remember who said them all because I wrote them down. I didn't write the names. Silly.
Go on then. You tell them. I'll soak them in.
I think one of the Davids. I think it might have been David Stead said, "Have a plan and stick to it. Stick to your plan." He said that before you. This is really back early.
Have a plan and stick to it. Yeah. Yes, but when things go wrong, there's always something you can do. So if you might be sticking to your plan and something's gone wrong and stuffed your plan up, and then what are you going to do? Well, there's always something. Don't panic. If it goes really badly wrong, the best thing to do is to put it down, walk away from it, and come back the next day when you've calmed down and it never looks as bad as what you think. Ask me how I know.
Well, actually,
I promise you, it never looks as bad as you think. And come back to it the next day, and if you're still stuck about what you're going to do, head over to the forum, take a picture of what you've done, and then we'll suggest how you can fix it. You would be surprised. You have to do something really, really bad before your workpiece is completely trash. So there's always something you can do to rescue it.
Okay.
The best laid plans of mice and men err astray.
Funnily enough,
but there's always something you can do.
I wrote that one myself because something you said earlier on. I put if you're into put the kettle on because rushing at things we've learned, haven't we, over the years?
Don't
that
rush.
Rushing's just there's no point.
Time's the only thing we've got, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day.
And you know from experience that rushing it just ends up costing us more time anyway, doesn't it?
Yes, more haste, less speed, they say.
Now I think this was Ross. I can't really remember. Apologies but somebody said never eat yellow snow. So there's one for you. I don't think that's got any.
Frank Zappa, I think was.
I think it was Peanuts, wasn't it?
One of the first to talk about that.
Deej says, "Do not use the master. Always make a copy."
Good point. I forgot to say that earlier. If you do buy patterns from us, links are in description, then I would recommend the first thing you do is take a copy of it. Then you'll never have to buy it again. So you probably shouldn't have said that. I probably shouldn't have said that, Carol.
You said that before.
So yes, I think we're going to wrap it up now. So,
no, because we've still got these things on the list.
Get through them then.
Right, and look, quickly, B Power.
Standing there like a dick. Come
no,
on.
You're not.
Come on.
Oh, they'll be glad. We're back to normal again now. So, B Power says he's still deciding what guitar to build for a first build. He likes electrics, but he loves acoustics. Being an acoustic player, would you suggest he starts with an electric?
My advice would be to start with something basic. I would recommend that you start. This is kind of similar to the guitar that we make on the course. except for that it's got 2 pickups, so you can have 1 or 2 pickups. There's a whole multitude of customizations that you can do, but I do recommend that you keep it simple at the start. Also, for an acoustic guitar, there are some extra tools that you will need. So if you start with the electric guitar, then you can get all your tools together for that, and then none of them are wasted because you'll need them all again to make your acoustic guitar, but then you'll need a few extra ones as well. So if you want to get started quickly, I'd go straight for the electric. But if you're not restrained by budget and you really want to make an acoustic, then there's no reason why you couldn't start with an acoustic. So really it's your call. But I always recommend you start with the basics and work up from there. So start with an electric and then go on to an acoustic. But you don't have to, it's your call.
No, although I think as someone who's not very experienced in the making department, I would say that an electric's more forgiving, isn't it? You might have to take, it takes longer for an acoustic.
Yeah, I think you're
bits
probably
more
right there.
small.
With acoustics, you're working with very thin pieces of wood, and so even a deep scratch can be a problem. Whereas with an electric guitar, you know, none of that's a problem.
Okay, so now, Superclunk said, didn't you say you were going to make an announcement? So you might have to try and remember what that was, right? Okay. Should we just finish the list of tips? Well, apparently you did, yes, at the beginning. And
That was before my mental breakdown.
so,
Shall I do it now then?
well, no. Do you want me to read the tips out, or do you know what the announcement?
Go on, read the tips out.
So the other tips that came in today were never leave a cup of tea next to the router, because you always end up with.
Guitar maker's tea, it's always full of sawdust.
The one that really gets me is when he's been routing, when he's been doing the cavities, and you end up with little lumps of black plastic in everything. That's awful. Right. Eddie Cameron said, "Don't rush the sandpaper grades. Don't rush through the grades when you're doing your sandpaper.
Don't rush anything. Relish it.
Relish.
Enjoy each process. You have to learn to love sanding if you're going to be a guitar maker, because there's a lot of it. Did I mention that guitar making is mostly rubbing one thing on top of another thing?
You definitely did say that. Right, so don't panic. That was one that's come up, hasn't it?
Don't panic. We've covered that.
And Marcel Besselink, now he suggested
Howdy, Marcel.
His tip was that not just one, maybe 2 or 3, but 4, maybe ... Bailey, build your own course. Come to the workshop and do a course. Obviously at the moment we can't, but hopefully in 2021.
There's no substitute for experience, is there?
No, in 2021.
Marcel's one of our veterans.
But what's interesting is that when we started doing the online things, we wondered whether it would undermine our courses, and it doesn't, because there are people who want to do both, and there's room for all of it. So yeah, do a course or
Learn from as many places as possible. That's what I always recommend. Not just from me, but from everywhere. That's what I did, and I'm still doing.
Well, and so there's only one more thing that I want to say. There was a lot of 2 things actually. Sorry, there was quite a lot of discussion about the thous and the mils, right, in the chat, and apparently R&R Rock and Roller 912 says 1,000 mil is 360 degrees as well. So
right, well, just to add to confusion.
Yeah. So you basically check your measurements, check which.
Yeah. Check thrice.
Didn't something really major get screwed up recently because they were supposed to?
Happens all the time.
They were supposed to use American things.
Happens all the time.
Right. So the other thing is that Eddie Cameron said he's actually signed up today. He's signed up, which is really good. David.
Cheers, Eddie.
David.
Thanks to all our other premium members as well.
I think it's David Buckner. There's a David in the chat who said that he's hoping it's hard to buy presents for. He's hoping he's getting it for Christmas.
Fingers crossed for you.
And
yes, you can buy the premium membership as a gift, but just bear in mind that it goes instantly. So if you want it to arrive on Christmas Day, you've got to do it on Christmas Day. Or
don't tick the box and
contact Carol.
And I'll sort it out.
You can. The alternative method is to buy it for yourself, and then on Christmas Day you can transfer ownership to somebody else, gift it to them that way. there's ways and means to do it. If you're stuck and confused about how you're going to do it, just email carol@baileyguitars.co.uk and Carol will sort you out.
So, is there an announcement then?
Yeah, announcement then. Right, we've finally decided, kind of, what we're going to do with Lockdown Lucy. And we've decided that it's going to go to one of you premium members. So one of our premium members is going to be the proud owner of Lockdown Lucy.
Yeah, and we'll dust it off
So what we're going to do is...
in January.
So we're trying to encourage new members as well. So everyone who signs up as a premium member is going to be entered into a prize draw. If you're already a premium member, then you don't have to do anything. You're going to be entered anyway. So the short version of the announcement is one of you premium members, lucky people, is going to be the proud owner of Lockdown Lucy.
And what we're saying is that you haven't explained properly, really, have you?
No.
So we're gonna do this in January when after Christmas, after the end of the year and all of that. When January's normally a bit of a downer for everybody. So we're gonna give ourselves something to look forward to next year. But it is related to being a premium member, and we'll explain it.
So somewhere around the 1st of January, but maybe not the 1st of January. Somewhere around that date. We'll be doing the draw, and we'll do it live on the internet or something.
No, Mark, we won't be doing the draw at the beginning. We're gonna explain it in January. We'll make clear what it's about.
But basically, if you want to win the guitar, become a premium member, and then you're in with a chance. And that's basically it. The other thing is, premium membership is going to go up next year. Not for existing members; it'll stay the same. But for new members, the price is going to go up next year. So if you're thinking about joining, then now is the best time to join. Join now, and then you'll get the best price, and you'll also get the chance to win it. You've got to be in it to win it. Got to be a premium member. And that's it. So to all you guys who've struggled on with us till the end and suffered with me through my mental breakdown halfway through, yeah, I always get emotional when I think about how much support and help I've had along the way, because I just wouldn't be here without, especially without Carol over there, but without you guys and all our Bailey customers and everybody who's bought a guitar from us. Yeah.
All our musicians. Well, I just want to remind people that there's still time to buy stuff if you want stuff. We've got our last sending out week.
Buy stuff. Go to the website and buy stuff. Carol's saying, buy it now, buy it now, buy it now, buy it now. Right. And thank you so much, guys. What I was trying to say was, without you guys, this would be nothing. Nothing of this would happen. So it's your fault. And thank you, especially to, was it Boo who gave us a...
Yeah, a super job.
Boo, yeah.
But thanks to everybody. We've had a lot of orders so thank you to everybody.
And yeah, it's you guys that are actually keeping us going at the moment. So without you guys, we'd be out on the street going hungry. So thank you.
So
and
what's
remember,
the last tip?
The most important thing, saved the ultimate tip till last. We all know the ultimate tip is to check twice, but cut only once. Bye.